Welcome back, everybody, for another deep dive. This time we're exploring Jujutsu Kaisen, and specifically Kokichi Muto. You know him as Mechimaru. We've got some great background from the fandom wiki on this one, and well, let me tell you, this character is more than meets the mech eye. Let's just say that.
Yeah, what's really interesting about Kokichi is this contrast between his public persona and then the reality of his existence. I mean, you see him, he's a second year at Kyoto Jujutsu High.
Yeah.
You know, he pilots this ultimate Mechimaru, so he's got this powerful image. But the truth is, there's a whole lot more going on there.
Okay, so more to him than meets the eye, literally.
Yeah.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
So Kokichi was actually born with a heavenly restriction.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and for those who don't know, this is basically a limitation placed on a jujitsu sorcerer's abilities, you know? It can come at a steep price. For Kokichi, it meant his body was left incredibly frail. Like, imagine no right arm, legs that barely work, skin so sensitive he couldn't even be in sunlight, and oh yeah, constant pain.
Man, that's rough. So he wasn't just rocking the mecha puppet for show, huh? It was like his only way to really, live.
Exactly. His restriction did have a trade-off, though. It gave him incredible cursed energy, range and output. But the cost was his normal life.
Yeah, that's a tough one. Having all that power, but not being able to experience the world like everyone else.
And this is where things get really interesting. You see, this sort of leads into his resentment of Panda.
Oh yeah, Panda. Okay, so for anyone listening who needs a refresher, Panda's that walking, talking cursed corpse, right?
That's him. And here's the thing, Panda, he actually got to, live life, experience things, move around freely, make friends. And that really got to Kokichi. He saw this and he was trapped, stuck in a body he hated. It bred this deep envy and bitterness in him that really shaped a lot of his choices.
Man, yeah, I bet. That psychological impact must have been immense. To see Panda, who technically shouldn't even be alive, having the freedom Kokichi craved.
Exactly. And it wasn't just physical, it was emotional too. You're denied something so basic as a healthy body. Well, it takes a toll.
Hey, before we go too much further, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on the rest of this deep dive. Now back to Kokichi. It sounds like this longing, this resentment, it led him down a pretty dark path.
Yeah, it did. This is where we get to his deal with Mahito's group.
Right. Okay, So that's a pretty big turn. What led him to that point?
For Kokichi, it wasn't just about, joining the bad guys. It was a chance to escape the prison of his own body, to get a healthy one, to have the life he always wanted. He agreed to be their mole at Jujutsu High. But the price was steep. It was a moral compromise that really shows you how badly he wanted a normal life.
A desperate gamble, for sure, but it wasn't entirely heartless, was it? There was that condition in his binding vow with Mahito, right?
You're right. He made sure they couldn't hurt any of his classmates from Kyoto. It's a fascinating detail, Because even though he made this choice to betray the jujitsu world, a part of him still cared. It shows his loyalty, adds another layer to him. He's not just some power-hungry traitor. He's more complex than that.
Yeah, it really makes you think about the whole ends justify the means thing. Like, was he hoping to somehow outsmart Mahito in the end?
Yeah.
Protect his classmates A&D, get what he wanted. Risky move, for sure.
Definitely risky. And speaking of risky, let's talk about his cursed technique. Puppet manipulation.
Right. And because of his heavenly restriction, it was amplified like crazy. He could control those puppets from anywhere, like a crass Japan-level control.
Wow. Okay, so Ultimate Mechamaru, I'm guessing that was a big part of all this.
Oh, yeah. That thing was loaded. Sword Ashin, Ultra Spin, the Ultra Cannon, Mode, Albatross, you name it, it had it. And don't forget Mode. Absolute, That was the big one. Huge mecha suit that used years of stored cursed energy. I mean, we're talking devastating attacks here. Ultra Cannon, Miracle Cannon, even Pigeon Viola. So he was packing some serious heat. But it sounds like he wasn't just a one-trick pony, Like the wiki mentioned his tactical skills too. He was a planner.
Oh, absolutely. Like, remember that fight with Panda during the Goodwill event? That wasn't just random attacks. Kokichi was analyzing Panda's every move, figuring out his strengths and weaknesses, and adapting his tactics in real time. He was always thinking a few steps ahead, a real strategist.
Which makes his final battle with Mahito even more tragic. He had all that power, all that planning, and still lost. It must have been crushing to get so close, only to be defeated at the very end.
Yeah, it's a tough one. It shows that brains and brawn aren't always enough, Mahito was a cursed spirit, so he really understood human emotions, and he used that to his advantage. He played on Kokichi's desperation, that deep desire for a normal life. It's kind of ironic. The thing Kokichi craved most was ultimately what led to his downfall.
It really adds to the tragedy of his story. This yearning for connection, for a life without limitations. It became his undoing.
And what makes it even sadder, is he never got to achieve his dream. He never even got to meet his classmates face to face. Remember that final message to Kasumi Miwa? The one where he tells her to find happiness? It's heartbreaking.
Yeah. It's like even in his last moments he was thinking of others. Shows you that even though he took a dark path, there was still good in him.
For sure. But there's something else that people often forget. Even in death, Kokichi had an impact. Remember those little mini Mechamaru communication devices?
Oh yeah. What were those?
Well, they actually proved to be crucial during the Shibuya incident. Kokichi had him prepped and ready to go to help guide his fellow sorcerers. Even though he'd made this deal with Mahito, a part of him still wanted to protect them.
It's like his final act of redemption, in a way. Trying to make amends for his betrayal really highlights the complexity of his character.
Exactly. He was capable of such kindness and strategic brilliance, even while dealing with immense suffering. It's what makes him such a fascinating character to analyze. And it raises a really interesting question. What if he'd never had that heavenly restriction in the first place?
Yeah, would he have been like a star student?
Oh.
A hero even? Or would he have gone down a totally different path? Something to think about for sure.
It really is. Imagine Kokichi with all that potential but no physical limitations. Would he have used it for good, or would he have become a major threat? We'll never know, but it's a fascinating thought.
And even though he's gone, his impact is still felt. His knowledge, his tactical mind, even those communication devices, they all played a part in what happened after his death.
Absolutely. It's like his story continues to affect the Jujutsu world. It reminds us that even in this world of curses and battles, human connection really matters. And Kokichi, despite everything, was connected to the people around him.
There's one more thing about his technique that I want to touch on. The wiki mentioned he developed a sort of anti-domain technique, which is impressive considering he couldn't even create a full domain himself.
Oh yeah, you're talking about a simple domain. It shows how resourceful he was. He didn't let his limitations define him. He found a way to work around them.
So instead of being held back by his restriction, he turned it into an advantage. Pretty clever.
Exactly. He was always thinking outside the box, innovating, pushing the boundaries of his technique, trying to find ways to outsmart his opponents. And that's another reason why people are drawn to his character. He never gave up.
Well, I think we can all agree that Kokichi Muto was one complicated dude. He was full of contradictions, driven by both good and bad intentions. And ultimately, it was a tragic end for him. It really makes you think about how, even in a world of supernatural powers and stuff, it's the human element that makes it all so compelling.
Yeah, well said. He was a character that defied easy labels, made us question our ideas of heroes and villains. His story really makes you think about morality, desperation, what we do to get the life we want. And those questions stay with you long after the story is over.
If you're enjoying these podcasts, make sure to subscribe. Thanks once again, and we'll see you soon.